Time for another coffee with Kilroy, or what I sometimes call beverage in a book. My beverage, well, coffee. Hope you're enjoying something that you like. And my book, well, this really isn't a book. This is a magazine. But as I flip through this, I might cover something more than a magazine. I might cover some books, might cover some games, and I might cover some movies. And that's what this article is about. This is Twilight Struggle, the Cold War Movies. Has a title there, Oscar Night with a K. This is an article by Jason Matthews, and it was in issue number 37 of the recent C3I magazine. I say recent to when I'm publishing this, but when you're seeing this, who knows when that came out. But this came out in 2023. So I'll put a link to some of my other videos. I've covered quite a bit of what is in this installment of C3I magazine number 37. And so as I was doing the page through of that, I hit this article and decided that I was going to spend a little bit more time with this article. And I thought, what better way to do it than to get a cup of coffee, sit down with some of my closest and dearest friends, but then they didn't show up, so I have you all. So no, I do appreciate anybody that watches my channel and likes and subscribes and comments. Just comment. Let me know what you're thinking. So I do consider you all dear friends in that regard. So this is Twilight Struggle, the Cold War at the Movies, an article by Jason Matthews. And if you're not familiar, Jason Matthews was one of the co-designers of Twilight Struggle, the Cold War, 1945 to 1989. This is an excellent game. Excuse me, I'm still fighting that cough, guys and gals. This is an excellent game on kind of the tug of war during the Cold War and trying to spread influence throughout the world to win the Cold War, so to speak. This game is also, I think it's an excellent game and plays well and is ranked very high on a lot of different, game rating areas, especially like, Board Game Geek and stuff like that. It's also somewhat of a controversial topic, especially when you throw in the extra title of War Game. That usually brings up a great debate on whether this is a war game or not. I'm not going to get into that debate or let you know how I feel on this. I think this is an excellent game and very much a good introduction into the Cold War from a gaming standpoint, because there's a high replayability and game value here. Both sides can win, and how you make decisions makes a difference, but also the historical value of this game I find very enlightening. There's history on the cards, but then the overall look of the map and what you're trying to accomplish really plays out some of the potential options and alternatives and events that could have happened and did happen during the Cold War. So enough of that. But this was kind of the impetus for the article, and because they actually gave out it comes in this big plastic bag here. They gave out an alternate set of cards, or an optional set of cards, as you can see here, for Twilight Struggle, that deal with James Bond. All these are James Bond movies, but they all do the same thing. You draw one card from opponent's hand. If the card is your affiliation, score 2 points. Kiss opponent. So be sure you know who you're playing with, or if you don't know them, you will after you play this card. So, and there's all the different James Bond movies there, as you can see. So this is a variant for this game, which kind of led to this article. Excuse me. I'm gonna get some coffee there. And so that's kind of a neat little, kind of a nice little tie-in to this whole topic, and found that very interesting. And so feel free to put your thoughts on Twilight Struggle. If you want to get into the horror game debate, feel free, have at it. Just be an adult about it. Yeah, there you have it. That is Twilight Struggle. What is this article about? Well, this is talking about Cold War movies. So these are movies that are in the Cold War, and I'm not going to or focus on topics of the Cold War. And I'm not going to go into, I'm not going to read this whole article. It's not that long of an article. I mean, it's only, let's see here, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4. It's only 4 pages. I guess I could read the whole article, but I suggest you pick up your copy of C3I number 37, because there's 3 games in there. There's other modules and variants and scenarios for other games, and then of course the James Bond cards, and then good articles. So what does this article do? Well, it's talking about movies in the Cold War, the influence of the Cold War on movies and the movie industry, but also its influence on the people, but also in the topics, and also how those movies kind of influenced everybody else during this time period. So I found this to be a very interesting article. You have the iconic Rocky versus the Russians. This is Rocky IV. Saw that in the theater, and that kind of shaped. Not all the Rocky movies were focused on that, but this one, which came out in '85, really was kind of trying to go in at the heart, and it was in a very kind of sappy and jingoistic kind of way, showing the conflict between the two nations. So it kind of a good poster child for the Cold War in that regard. And the article goes on, a war for the hearts and mind, and talking about the Cold War. And one of the aspects it talks about, is kind of how it affected the the movie industry, and talking about the McCarthy era, because that fed into fear and the red fear and blacklisting and the like. And so it doesn't go into a lot of depth on that, but it does talk about that. But that's an area that there's a lot of movies about that now. There's like Trumbo and other movies that talk about. I can't. I've seen like probably at least 3 or 4, if not more, that talk about the McCarthy era and the ill effects of it, and how it destroyed lives and careers. So that had an effect on this, because that pulls right out of the Cold War, and how the public and politics reacted to it as well. If you want to find out a little bit about some of the blacklisting from a different perspective, I mean, again, there's a lot of good books and movies out there. But when I was back in school, one book that I had read for class was Reagan's America, and this is kind of a biography of Reagan, but it talks a little bit about his days, and he was like the SAG president, and was very active in some of the blacklisting efforts. So so interesting read here, Reagan's America, if you want to get a little bit different perspective on that period. The whole book's not about that. It's really it's a biography on Reagan, but in a different perspective at that. If you want to play a game on that, who wants to play a game on blacklisting? But you've got Hollywood, 1947 here. You can see right there, there's a little bit of shine there. I did a coverage of this, did an unboxing and coverage of this. This is kind of a group game. Not necessarily a party game, but a group game, an interesting game. It's a little bit tongue in cheek. Wow, what did I almost say there? But it has that theme and effect as well. There's certain movies that are going to be communist inspired, or by communist sympathizers, and so you're trying to it's kind of a two sides kind of thing, a little bit of a traitor type game in that regard. And so I'll put a link to that coverage of that as well. So that's a little bit of the McCarthy and blacklisting and that aspect of how that affected some of the movie industry and our looks, and especially during the early days of the Cold War. It goes into some of the, nuclear option movies, Failsafe, um, Doctor Strangelove. No movie, no article or about movies during the Cold War is complete without Doctor Strangelove. Excellent movie. Peter Sellers, George C. Scott. George C. Scott is amazing in it, especially when you kind of, look in the mirror of Patton, or kind of balance that up against what his role as Patton. He plays a military general here as well, but a little bit different kind of one. Or maybe it's the same kind of one, just a little bit more animated. Peter Sellers plays multiple parts in this movie, including the title, Doctor Strangelove. Excellent movie, black and white, if that scares you guys away, but very good movie, and very satirical and biting in its kind of take on the Cold War and kind of the nuclear option type method. Failsafe, I've seen that. Good movie as well. Very tense, very dramatic. And I can't remember. I read this article a while back, or not too long ago, but when I first got this. I think Failsafe might have been, it was either Failsafe or another movie that was kind of broadcast live. I think it was another movie that was kind of broadcast live that kind of talked about this topic as well. But that's a good movie. As you can see there, you got Larry Hagman of Dallas fame and I Dream of Jeannie, and you've got Henry Fonda there as the President of the United States. So some good acting in that movie as well. Moving on here, some of the stuff, of course, it's going to talk a little bit about spying, and that's an aspect of the Cold War that we probably see the most books and the most movies on. I mean, they make movies even today about Cold War spy operations and the like. But James Bond, that whole series of movie really fed into that. And I was kind of part of that. I followed the James Bond movies. Gonna get me some coffee here. And I remember one of my more interesting events was when I worked for the agency back in the day, and it was a group of us that worked together, different areas though, and we went to the movies. We went to a James Bond movie, and so that was just kind of like art imitating life, or life imitating art, or what have you. We're just sitting there, all of us working for the same intelligence organization, watching a James Bond movie. So I don't know. Maybe it's spy geekdom is what that was. Anyway, so those movies are interesting. Again, they're I'm not going to go into a whole discussion of James Bond movies. They're a genre. There's a formula that goes to it. The suave, debonair spy who gets all the women, and then gets all the women, and gets all the women, and then the outrageous villain who likes to monologue and tell his whole plot instead of just killing James Bond, but comes up with an elaborate way to kill James Bond. I mean, somewhat formulaic. The latest series has changed some of that, and it's come a little bit more harsh and brutal and kind of in your face, and gets a little bit more more of a puzzle to try to figure out. You really don't know what's going on, or if ever. But anyway, it's a genre, and it's interesting, but it also had a dramatic effect on the Cold War as far as, somewhat propaganda and, keeping people interested in, there's bad guys out there, and we've got to figure out what they're doing. So this also gets into, the Red Scare of what happens if we were invaded. What happens if we, the impregnable fortress of the United States is invaded. Well, the movie Red Dawn, Patrick Swayze and a whole host of young actors, young at that time, that C. Thomas Howell, Leah Thompson, Harry Dean Stanton, Ryan O'Neal, see who else, Charlie Sheen, Jennifer Grey. So yeah, Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey there before Dirty Dancing. So anyway, or after, was that after Dirty Dancing? I think that was before. Anyway, you've got Red Dawn, which kind of shows the plight of the United States being invaded, and then having the militia or the population having to stand up to it. And if we're going to talk about Red Dawn, and we're going to talk about the impregnable fortress of the United States, we've got to talk about Fortress America, right? So this is the game of it. This is a later edition of that game, but the first edition came out during the Cold War. There was a couple of different editions. There was one that had Saddam Hussein on the cover, and then one that didn't, and then of course this one here. The thing I don't like about this one is they took off my hometown. In the original edition, you had Kansas City as one of the cities on the map, and now I guess it got nuked, but it's not here in this game. But there are choices when you do reprints and later versions of games. But Fortress America is not only the Soviets invading, but you have Latin America and you have Asia invading. So you have three different forces descending upon the United States. And then, of course, the United States in the middle, defending them all off. And you got a little bit more advanced weaponry and a whole bunch of other issues here. This is very much kind of a dudes on the map and rolling buckets of dice for kind of combat. But still an interesting game. My son and I played this a few times, and I like it. I mean, it's got a nostalgia value, of course, but there's some fun. There's an interesting game in here. Not necessarily a detailed sim of it. We can wait for Mark Walker to come up with a lot of his tactical games. World at War that talked, there was a whole module that talked about invading the United States that kind of mirrored some of the same different factions that were coming in. But and there's a lot of other games that deal with that as well. I might do a whole deep dive and topic on that at some point. But Fortress America is something that you play while you have Red Dawn in the background on your TV. So the article talks about some of those movies and the like, and then they really kind of go into a little bit more of a deep dive on Dr. Strangelove. I mean, deep dive meaning like 2-3 columns of that. Again, I highly cannot recommend enough. Watch this movie. I remember when I first became aware of it, I was not interested in it and thought it was kind of off and odd and really didn't get it the first time. The first time I watched it, I really wasn't into it. But then the more time I watched this, it's starting to become almost a remote control drop, right? You know what those movies are. Those are when you're like flipping through the channel on a evening or a Saturday afternoon and you come across a movie and you're like, okay, well, I know what I'm doing the rest of for the next, hour, half hour, 2 hours, whenever I got into the movie. Drop the remote and watch the movie. This is becoming kind of one of my remote drop movies in that regard. The other game they talk about here, again, we're back to the nuclear option, is a war game, which is weird. War Games came out in '81, and it was just on TV the other day. I was in a hotel room on a business trip, and it was on. It was late at night, it kind of became that's not a remote drop, but I didn't have anything better to do, so I ended up watching most of that movie as well. I hadn't seen that in years. I saw that at the theater. So interesting, and that's about how computer intelligence, hence, this is 81. They're not talking about AI, but they are talking about AI. And so what we're experiencing today, taking over the computer and launching the missiles and, Skynet. This is pre-Skynet here, but turns out to be almost a Skynet type situation. Skynet from Terminator fame there. So, then we're talking about Star Wars Strategic Defense Initiative, back to, that was an initiative that Ronald Reagan came up with. So it talks a little bit about that, and then it has a list of games to films to Twilight Struggle by. So I guess you get out your game of Twilight Struggle, maybe add in one of your James Bond cards that you got in your number 37 of C3I, and then this is like the top 10 games to Twilight Struggle by. So they have number 10 is Death of Stalin. That is from 2017, has an ensemble cast of some really good actors in there. That's a good movie. That it's funny. It's very irreverent. It's based on the true and real events of surrounding Stalin's death, but it's the timeline's collapsed a little bit. Some of the characters are a little bit maybe exaggerated, maybe not. How much do we really know about the inner workings of Russia during that time, or the Soviet Union during that time? But Death of Stalin, highly recommend that. That is very again satirical, dry, but funny. The Lives of Others, which is a German film featuring an East German Stasi agent listening to the conversation between an East German playwright and his lover. In the process of the agent discovers his own humanity. I'm not familiar with that movie. Not seen it. Charlie Wilson's War. That's one that's based on true stories as well. Tom Hanks is in that one, and that one is about a congressman trying to fund the Afghanis during the Soviet invasion. So, of course, there's some elements of our funding of that led to 9/11. So you get the whole history there. Then number 7, The Hunt for Red October. Well, I mean, come on now. You got to watch The Hunt for Red October. So this is Sean Connery at his best, Alec Baldwin as a CIA analyst, which I have some affiliation for there. So that's The Hunt for October. Good movie to watch because, it's actually action in there. The Right Stuff, that's our quest to go to the moon, kind of the Cold War battle, which, part of that is portrayed out in Twilight Struggle. There's a whole track of the race to the moon. And so you have The Right Stuff. The Dead Season, not familiar with that. That's 1968. Considered a classic Soviet noir drama. Not very familiar with that. From Russia with Love, there's the James Bond. Now, I can do a whole episode on James Bond. But From Russia with Love is not my favorite of the James Bond as far as who's portraying it. Roger Moore is the lead there. Is that Roger Moore? No, that's Sean Connery. So take that back. I'll get into that. Sean Connery, I like Sean Connery. I'm a Sean Connery James Bond. Roger Moore, not so much. In fact, I kind of like Timothy Dalton a little bit better than Roger Moore. But and Pierce Brosnan was kind of made for the role. And of course, the more recent James Bond is kind of taken it in a whole different direction and made it a little bit more gritty and more real. And so you've got to appreciate that. So I might put him. Probably put him number 2 behind Sean Connery. But anyway, we can have a whole discussion on that. Oppenheimer, this one to me is kind of interesting being Cold War. Technically, I guess it is Cold War, but it's the development of the nuclear of the atomic bomb. So. Yeah, there's elements in here that are during the Cold War, the hearings and stuff. It's all a look back kind of movie. Look back in 2 instances, actually, two different look backs. But I don't know if I'd really put this in the Cold War category. A good movie. I liked it, enjoyed it. My family hated it, fell asleep, but I really enjoyed it. The Manchurian Candidate, good. If you want to really get into the spy and into the psych ops, then Manchurian Candidate is something to look at. And then, of course, Dr. Strangelove, again, kind of the go-to in this space. I would add one movie here. I'd probably, the ones I'm not familiar with, I can't really say whether to keep on or not. But as far as I would take out Oppenheimer off this list. I might take out some of the others too, but I would probably take out Oppenheimer on this list, and I would put in Atomic Blonde. That one, it's the Cold War because it's the fall of the Cold War, and a lot of what's going on in that is a lot of the results of the Cold War and all that built up tension. But it's really a spy movie. I mean, it's a double cross, triple cross, quadruple cross type, quadruple agent type stuff at times. Spy movie, but my goodness, there's some really intense fight scenes in there. But it's about the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it's the towards the end of the Cold War, but it's all steeped in Cold War mentality. So I would put in Atomic Blonde. Oh, I was pointing to the bomb there. Atomic Blonde instead of Oppenheimer. Get some coffee here. So there you go. That is my coffee with Kilroy today. My Kilroy goes to the movies. My Kilroy talking about games and books and everything under the sun here in this article. But this article, even though it's only 4 pages, it kind of spurred a lot of thought and consideration for different games that are out here. I'm not gonna be able to put my the Fortress America on here. It'll crush everything. But there you have it. That is my coffee with Kilroy today. Kilroy goes to the movies. You got a little bit of a bookshelf going on here as well. Love to know your thoughts. What do you think about this list of movies? What do you think about this article? What is your experiences of the Cold War from movies, from the movie perspective? What are your go-to, or what do you think portrayed it the best? Or even from games perspective is fine too. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by and having some coffee. This was a little bit longer one, but I got to rambling. Anyway, take care. Thanks for watching.